Do you think AI could have ever uncovered that insight? Or does it take a human level of ingenuity and creativity to see that insight and connection?
The insight could not have been done by an AI. The observation, yes. Technology can help us a lot to gather the observations. But I think that last mile, the mile of really translating this into emotion, that I don't think it can be captured that easily.
Quick audit of your day. Did you use Dove in the shower? Did you spread some Hellmann's on a sandwich? Use Vaseline? Are you wearing deodorant? If so, you've been interacting with one of the brands managed by today's guests. Leandro Barreto, the recently appointed Global Chief Marketing Officer of Unilever. He's steering the nearly 100-year-old company with over 400 brands and a marketing budget in the billions. He's been in the company 23 years. He's worked all over the world, from his early days in Brazil to now headquartered in London. He's uniquely positioned to answer the ultimate question facing our industry. In this AI-powered moment, what is left for human marketers? His answer will surprise you. So, we're hearing how thousands of creators are using Vaseline in fun and unexpected ways. Leandro is a masterclass in frontier marketing. Let's find out how he does it. I'm incredibly excited today to speak to Leandro. He is the newly appointed Global CMO of Unilever. That's managing over 400 brands, a budget in the B for billions, and trying to create relevance and culture at scale, all in this AI-powered moment. Leandro, welcome to the pod.
Hello.
You've been at Unilever 23 years. You're now the global CMO. That loyalty to one company is super impressive. I mean, I've been at Google 15 years now, so I'm getting there. Okay, what is the secret sauce inside of Unilever? Because you could go to other companies and you've chosen to stay at this company for 23 years. So what is the thing that has kept you at this company? What is the thing that I don't know about that is inside of Unilever and is magical?
I think it's this obsession we have in serving people inside and outside. We can call this consumer love. We can call this consumer intimacy. But at our best, I think the work here is really about understanding what people want. In my career, many times I was like, am I a marketer? Am I a psychologist? Because ultimately I'm trying to get into what matters to people. And we really value that. We remain true to this idea that what we do needs to have a meaning. And I think this is really important. And this gives energy. I never felt I needed to find energy anywhere else.
Can you give me an example of where you found meaning in a brand? There's 399 other brands in your portfolio that you sort of focus on. Just help us understand finding that meaning for consumers and how that translates into a marketing strategy.
I can give you many examples. One of my favorite is Dirt is Good. Dirt is Good is our laundry brand. It's called different names in different countries like Persil, Omo, Surf. But essentially it's a brand that was built through this idea that when you get dirty, this means you are growing, you are developing, you are enjoying life. So the meaning of this brand is, of course, offering products that help you to remove stains and getting clothes that are clean and fresh. But it is ultimately about allowing people to get dirty without the guilty. And I think this is fantastic. So, for example, more recently, we are working with the Arsenal team in the UK. And it's fantastic to see that the closer we get to the community, the more the meaning of the brand makes sense. Because we could be talking about the obvious stuff like removing stains, many brands activating sport. But because we understand the role this brand has, when we talk to women in Arsenal, we're talking about stains that are not the stains normally people talk about. Stains in their underwears and blood and the things that are very intimate and many brands would shy away from. But we can do because we understand what the brand means to these communities, right? So I think Dirt is Good is a great example and one I'm super proud of.
I remember that campaign. It won all the awards, so congratulations. Also, for everyone listening, I've already recorded an interview with Juliette Slot, who is the Chief Commercial Officer of Arsenal Football Club, soccer club. It was a really interesting episode where she talked about the brand partnerships she has with companies like yourselves. Just on that Dirt is Good, do you think AI could have ever uncovered that insight? Or does it take a human level of ingenuity and creativity to see that insight and connection?
I think that the insight could not have been done by an AI. The observation, yes. Technology can help us a lot to gather the observations about how clothes matter to people. We could probably have got very close to the understanding the occasions in which people get dirty and their clothes get dirty are occasions where they are playing and developing. But I think that last mile, the mile of really translating this into emotion or really having that feeling that only people who actually have kids, for example, and know how much they playing outside, it starts outside, all their development, that I don't think it can be captured that easily. I still believe that there's poetry there, that it's essentially human.
I agree with you. It's really interesting seeing how AI is developing, and it's all happening so fast. Who knows? But we, inside of Google Marketing, found we had a database of 3 million verbatims, 3 million comments that people had given us about our hardware business. And we weren't looking at it. It's impossible to read 3 million comments, right? So, but we actually put AI on it, and that AI was able to organize it, structure, help us look at it. But it still took a human to ask the questions of AI. Because when we asked, what do you see here? It didn't give us anything particularly insightful. But when we actually said, explain this, explain that, we were able to find some really interesting insights. And so I think the notion of AI helping us uncover things at scale is really, really important. But that spark of genius, the insight, I just don't see AI yet getting there. Maybe it will, but not for a while.
Absolutely, Josh. I'm with you. And I was thinking a lot about that recently. We, in a different example, Vaseline in South Africa is a beloved product. And we know people use Vaseline in many occasions, and especially parents, they use to put Vaseline in the kids' faces before they go to school. It's a ritual, right? Anyone who has grown up in South Africa, they know that Vaseline is part of the ritual to go to school. We created a campaign called Love Hurts that really brings to life the memories that people have from their childhood when their parents were really rubbing Vaseline in their face before they go to school. This observation can be captured by a machine. Parents put Vaseline in the face of their kids. But what this means, because this is a proxy for love. When we talk to the kids, they say, when I remember the hands of my parents in my face, I remember love. That's what love meant to me. That I don't think it can be captured because only humans understand what these rituals they mean.
Once you've identified that this emotion of love and the sort of the nostalgia of your parents doing this to you, how did that translate into a marketing program? And what did that do for the business of Vaseline?
The way this translates into a marketing program for us, first is about attention awareness, is the foundation of the marketing principles, right? I think when we recognize the relevance of the product in people's lives, we really get back attention. We really get back engagement, and people really reignite the conversations that they have had for years about the brand. And it does translate actually in sales. We have seen over time with this campaign that even for a product like Vaseline that's present in so many households, there is the need to refresh the memory structures. And when we bring this with relevance, we can see again the repeat rates going up. So it's a repeatable model of relevance.
And increasing growth, like you spoke about. I like that you use the phrase memory structures there. I mean, that has definitely got a neuroscience, scientific, hard science claim to part to it. But at the same time, you're talking about the love and the emotion and tapping into that. I'm really intrigued at the journey that Unilever has been on and that you're now leading, because back in the day, you invented soap operas. Soap operas are called soap operas because of companies like Unilever. TV, broadcast, mass reach, tonnage, volume. And then somewhere in the sort of the 2000s, you guys moved into a sort of purpose-built marketing. And the Dove campaign for Real Beauty, I think, was an exact example of that. I guess Dirt is Good as well. And now you're in somewhere else. And what's your sort of expectation and your perception of what modern marketing means today, and where's Unilever at in that sort of continuation of strategy?
Yeah. So first, I think the marketing fundamentals have not changed. So actually has always been about doing what matters to people, about being relevant and meeting people where they are. So actually this transformation that you mentioned is nothing else but meeting people where they are. For us, it's really important to be in culture, and culture is happening within the communities in social media. So that's why we have made a significant shift to be where people are. We also, of course, understand that a shift in authority and credibility. It's super important that this is not only what the brand wants to say, but is also what the people want to say about the brand. And that's also why we have made a shift to creators, because I think finding those voices that are aligned with our values, aligned with the meaning of the brand that I mentioned before, and giving space for these voices is just part of being relevant.
That makes sense. Just on this journey, and let's use Dove. You've ran Dove and still do. What does it mean to be culturally relevant? And I'd love to hear about where you guys didn't quite get it right, or where there was a decision made which was like, you know what, reading relevance, attaching to cultural significance is hard. It's a skill. Where have you got it right? And where did it go wrong, or where did you have to course correct?
So this is a great point. So I've been working with Dove for 15 years, right? And in these 15 years, the most difficult things in Dove were the things you'd say no to. The rigor and the discipline to understand what you stand for and what the conversations you should not participate on is really hard, because you can be dragged into spaces that actually at surface level, it looks like the brand should be joining that conversation. But actually, when you look deeply, we have nothing to do there. So what Dove stands for has not changed since 2004, when we launched the campaign for Real Beauty. Has always been about giving people a positive experience about the way they look. And this has not changed at all. But it needs to be in the zeitgeist and be timely. So in the beginning, when this was about representation, was about talking about people being represented in media and advertising, that was the focus. That's how we showed up. When this started to become more about social media toxicity, the impact that was having in young girls in body confidence, we had to talk about building body confidence, self-esteem. And then when the world starts to move more towards joy, right? Joy and beauty starts to be very connected in the zeitgeist of today. Then we need to celebrate the different forms of beauty. So the meaning is the same, but the expression of that meaning is actually radically different in each one of the decades that we have been driving the purpose of Dove.
Can you talk a little bit about your process, though, in terms of how you help the teams, yourself, and then what signals and ways of working actually allows you around the world to identify emerging trends, identify whether that fits with your brand values and the process you go through? I think that'd be kind of interesting to hear, because you guys are the masters of this.
Yeah, we have very clear focus on defining what the brand stands for. In the past, this was living in books and guidelines, as many brands in the world had. Over time, this has evolved in becoming more systems, right? We have what we call now the brand DNA. So it's a bit of a mix of the old guidelines about what the brand stands for, with the usage of technology to actually flex those guardrails or that world building into the signals of what is happening out there. So we use a lot of social listening, a lot of technology to understand the conversations that are happening, the communities that matter to us, and how these conversations track back to the brand positioning. So we have established this process where we say it's not only about what the brand stands for, but also how the brand shows up. We created in many markets around the world what we call culture studios. So the people sitting in the market, community managers, social specialists, creator specialists, they are always working in groups and constantly in connection with the conversations that are happening and filtering if these conversations are things we should participate or not. Once they identify that, then the whole process of brief and content creation takes place. The difference now from before is that this is very fast. What it took us months now take hours, right? We have a much more agile way to approach content creation than we had before, and technology allowed us to do this.
Super interesting. We have Nano Banana inside of Google, our image generation technology. It blew up last year.
Yes.
Right. And in large part, it blew up because of the work coming out of sort of content creator-minded marketers in Southeast Asia who saw early trends, were able to get those trends in front of other sort of influencers and actually scale out. And it took over the world. It was kind of remarkable seeing that speed of insight, but exactly in those areas you're talking about. Let me just ask about the Vaseline Verified campaign, right? As I understand it, and I'll make up the number, but I think I read 300,000 creators were activated in some capacity. And what does it mean to activate 300,000 creators within a marketing program, like brand governance, matching luggage, consistency of tone and voice? How do you even cope with all that?
Yeah, so look, Vaseline Verified was really a game changing for us. It's not just a marketing campaign for Vaseline. It really changed the way we do marketing for our brand. It started with a very simple idea. And for many years, we knew people were using Vaseline in different ways, right? Many hacks of Vaseline. People were putting Vaseline in their dog's nose, in their shoes, in their door, in their car. And then when we understood that in many of these conversations, the number one question people were asking was, does it work? So you are telling me you use Vaseline this way, but does it work? Can I really trust? And then it really clicked because we said, well, there's a role for the brand. We are a science-based brand. We're founded in this idea that Vaseline works. So what if we understand our role not as creators of messages, but as verifiers of what they are saying? So simple idea. It changed everything because it was the first time, Josh, that creators were pitching to us. So when you talk about the 300,000, it's not how we started, right? It started organically with us responding to content that already existed out there. But in the moment people understood we were verifying the content and we're talking to people, they start pitching back and say, hey, I have a hack. Hey, I have the other hack. So the 300,000 became really organic influencers and creators. And the more we start understanding the impact they had, then we came with paid media. And then, of course, when you start from earned and then you put paid, then you have a big storm of impact and effect.
With hindsight, everything looks amazing, right? So as you went through this process, internally, what was the approval process? I understand you may be giving the approval, but you had to explain this to other members of the C-suite. You had to explain this to other important stakeholders inside of Unilever. Was there resistance there, or was it just smooth sailing, like gliding along Vaseline?
There was no resistance. I'm used to resistance. I think there are some ideas that they need to be nurtured very slowly until they can be shown. It's not the case of Vaseline Verified. I think it's built from such a relevant truth.
Okay, I have one silly question, then a proper question. What is your favorite use of Vaseline that you were not aware of that your team then verified?
Yeah, there are many of them because you can imagine it's a very fun piece of work. One that I really like is hay fever. It's one that was recognized now by the NHS, so it's in the NHS website. But with pollen, especially during spring, a lot of people suffer with hay fever. And I didn't know that Vaseline is verified. You can put Vaseline around your nostril and avoid some of the pollen to get in. So it's actually one of the most efficacious way to avoid hay fever. And I thought this was fascinating.
That is very, very interesting. And we should note, the reason you won the Titanium Award at Cannes for all this work is because it increased sales significantly and has done so in a sustained, growing way, right? Which is probably not true for most packaged goods most of the time, right? So significant growth, right?
Yeah, significant growth. And it's not only the growth, it's also where the growth came from. A lot of the growth came from e-commerce. So a lot of the creators were selling Vaseline. They joke they became Vaseline dealers because
Okay.
every time they go into one of the social commerce platforms, they recommend Vaseline, they get a portion of the sales. So having the sales happening through such an important growth channel for us, that is e-commerce, especially social commerce, gave another color to the growth, right? Because it showed again that is making the brand relevant in channels where probably the brand would not be present with the same relevance.
New growth opportunities are so important. And I've heard this from so many guests across this series of podcasts about finding new markets and new audiences you weren't particularly aware of. So let's just take it a little bit wider here. You hire a new vice president or senior marketing person from outside of Unilever, and you put them on one of your brands. What is the single mistake they're going to make when they try to copy what you've done with Vaseline and Dove and get to this relevance? That just because they're not used to this?
That's a great, it's a great question, Josh. I think the first mistake is to wanting to participate in culture. I think this became something now that every brand wants to do. So it's like, let me find a cultural moment that I want to participate. It doesn't work this way. I think it really starts from what you stand for. What are the conversations you have authority to join? I think a mistake is believing that we can build worlds. We actually don't build anything. We just join the worlds that communities have already built, right? When we go to games, when we go to NBA, when we go to the Super Bowl, we're not building anything. We're just joining in a party that is already happening. And a mistake is believing that we are building or we are creating or we can define the moment. We just need to be very selective to the moments that we have authority to participate. I think that would be my main advice.
You need to actually have a reason for being there. Colin and Samir, the two YouTube creators who I interviewed earlier this season of the pod, they talked about you need your brand to become a character in the creator's universe, a character in the universe of the audience you're participating in. You're not trying to become the superhero of that world. You just need to be within that world as one of the characters. I thought there was a nice articulation of being relevant in the right way.
I love that. And I think it's a perfect articulation indeed, because these communities, they have their own language, they have their own rule. And there's nothing worse than a brand trying to participate, not understanding the language, the rules, how people behave there. It sounds completely disconnected.
Fully agree. So we've been talking a little while and we haven't mentioned AI, or barely, which is, I actually find very refreshing and maybe speaks to some of the legacy strength of Unilever. You've been doing what you've been doing very, very well for a very, very long time. Obviously, AI is important. It's a massive moment. And in your role, now you have to accelerate the business and actually using AI. So can you just talk about what you've been doing as a marketing organization with AI? What's been working, what's not been working, what you've changed, what could you do today that you couldn't do a year ago? Any which way you want to take it, but I know people are interested.
Yeah, of course. I think what AI allows is the scale. And there is a paradox in this idea of desire at scale, right? Because desire tends to be more exclusive and sometimes not scalable. So to make desire scalable, you need technology. What AI allows us to do is really is to identify how to create the process and the systems to scale that desire. So there are two ways we are approaching AI, or many ways across the organization, but specifically marketing and demand creation. First is really looking at this, revising the workflow. I think we had at some point a lot of AI interventions, but they were only siloed interventions. Now the approach in partnership with Google and Google Cloud is really thinking about the workflow, how we're going to integrate AI from insights all the way to content optimization and media, and then back to insights. So it's less about the AI interventions in each part of the marketing process, but how we integrate the interventions, because that's where the intelligence layer is based, right? It's connecting the dots.
The first 2 or 3 years of our AI transformation was we tried to actually be all AI everywhere all at once, and it kind of didn't work. The technology wasn't there. So we really focused on point solutions. How do we make our trans creation? How do we make our media optimization? How do we make our measurement? But sort of in their silos. And like you, we're now starting to get towards how do we connect all those things?
Yeah.
where are you guys at on sort of that push a button at the start of the process? AI happens and insight, concepts, ads, measurement, media placement, just in one seamless flow. Is that happening today, or is it still 2 or 3 years out from a fully integrated AI approach?
No, it's not happening today, right? We're not there yet. But our way of creating content at scale is significantly different from what it was 2 years ago. Of course, the amount of content we create, I think every brand is in the same situation, is so huge. It looks like another generation when we were creating 30 assets for a specific campaign, when we create now hundreds of thousands of assets, and we only can do that because of AI. But more important than asset creation is how we are leveraging technology to understand how to make the assets better, more creative, more impactful, or stronger in creating brand equity. So the intelligence behind content at scale has significantly changed in the last 6 months or so. And that's something I'm really excited about because it's at the core of what we produce.
I'm just wondering, as you do this work, what's actually working? And I'd love you to be specific of, look, we did this and this happened and now we know that.
A specific one that I think is a strong one is that I don't think there is a paradox indeed between creativity and the production of content at scale or the leverage of AI. Because what we identified that is very powerful is that you do need a big idea, and then you do need the scale of content that helps that big idea to spread. Our best initiatives now, they leverage human creativity to unlock these big cultural moments that are quite human, but then they are backed up by an engine of content at scale that allows that big idea to last. And we have done this a few times now, combining big ideas with content at scale. That seems to be a recipe that again and again, in different cultures, in different brands, it works. When we have only the scale, or when we have just a big idea and not scaling, it dies in 3 days. But when we have both, it compounds. And that's quite strong.
How have you got your creative teams, your creative leaders internally and at your agencies to sort of embrace this way of working, this way of thinking, to actually operate in this way? Because that is a mindset shift, I think.
Yeah, it's a definite change. Is the most difficult part of the transformation. More than the adoption of technologies is really to unlearn some of the things that we have learned before. The way of doing is really by doing, what sounds a little bit just a play with words. What I have understood over time is that trying to educate people about the mindset shift cannot take us fast enough to where we want to go. We need to get people experimenting with that. We need to get the tools in their hands. You mentioned about the nano banana, right? Like in the moment we gave this to the hands of people and let them create internally and in the agents partners. And we promoted that as a way to recognize proactiveness and success is where the transformation happened. It gets quite contagious when it comes from experimentation. And it's very slow when it comes from education. So we're going more the route of throw yourself in the Atlantic Ocean and swim. And then we're going to see what happens after that.
I couldn't agree more. That it's such a clear point, and one of the clear learnings that we've had. You know, to quote Nike, you just do it. When you do it, it opens people's eyes. We do this section called signal versus noise. I'm just going to ask you signal versus noise. Leandro, signal versus noise. Is this a signal or is this noise? People eating super hot, spicy food, but putting Vaseline on their lips.
Signal. It works.
Okay. It's funny. Okay. Signal or noise? Fully synthetic AI generative beauty consultants, creators, advisors.
I think it's signal, not because I believe that influencers will become just AI, but I think they are helping to re-signify what human authenticity means. So it's a signal because I really think we'll change the way we look at what authentic influencer and creative release.
Do you think Unilever will ever have its own virtual synthetic beauty influencers in your marketing?
Well, if this is where the world is going and if people find this authentic and genuine, why not? But what we are focused on is to be authentic and to be true. So today we would not do, because I think it's more a way to actually perpetuate mistrust and confusion. But if it's based on authenticity and if it makes sense, why not?
Okay, great answer. I love that. Signal or noise? Creators are the new agency of record.
Noise. Creators and agencies have very different roles. I think creators, again, are not agencies. They're not media channels. They are just people that are using their voice and their credibility to talk about the things that matter for them. Agencies are different, right? They're partners that help us to build brands. So noise.
Okay. Signal or noise? Campaigns are dead.
Noise. Nothing is dead in absolute. I think we did move to more always-on conversations, but of course, campaigns exist. There are moments in which you need to communicate messages and engage with people with beginning, middle, and end. This didn't disappear and it won't.
You say all the right things like a professional CMO. You've been doing this for 4 months and they've got to you. They've got to you. Leandro, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. I think this episode is going to publish somewhere around Cannes, so I may see you around the beaches of Cannes.
Yeah.
Are you going to win anything big this year?
Oh, of course. We hope so. I'm very competitive, Josh, so I'm always for winning. So we are going there to win. So hopefully you'll see me and you ask, and hopefully you have won by that time.
I look forward to seeing that. Thank you again for the time.
Thank you.
Before we wrap, I want to leave you with 3 takeaways to carry into your week. Think of these as your field notes from the frontier. First, don't chase culture, join it. One of the sharpest points Leandro made today is that brands don't create culture on their own, communities do. Your job is to understand where your brand belongs and participate with something meaningful. Second, the last mile of creativity is human. We talked a lot about building desire at scale, and while AI can capture millions of data points, it still needs humans to translate those signals into emotional sparks. AI may help with the plumbing, but it still takes poetry to truly connect with people. Third, big ideas need systems to survive. A powerful idea can go viral for a moment, but attention fades fast. The brands that endure are the ones that combine strong creative instincts with systems that allow those ideas to scale and stay relevant over time. There are still so many lessons to be learned from the 20 years and counting of Dove's campaign for real beauty. So maybe that's the real through line from today's conversation. Technology may change the speed of marketing, but connecting with people remains the ultimate goal. This is the work at the frontier. Be sure to follow, rate, and review Frontier CMO on YouTube or wherever you get your shows. Thank you for joining us. For research, case studies, and tools to help you lead through the next platform shift, visit thinkwithgoogle.com, where we track the signals, cut through the noise, and share what leaders are actually testing in real time. We'll be back next episode with another leader operating the frontier. Until then, stay sharp and stay out front.